Hi there. You're listening to English Podcast for Beginners, your friendly guide to learning English step by step. Let's learn, practice, and grow together.
Okay, so imagine this scenario. You have dedicated, hours to learning English. You've mastered the grammar, you know all those tricky prepositions, and you feel, you're ready to engage with the world. And then you turn on a movie, or maybe you meet someone new, and suddenly the English coming out of their mouth sounds completely foreign. The rhythm is strange, the sounds are different, and you get that brief, sinking confusion of, wait, is this even the same language I learned?
Right, that feeling is universal.
And it's exactly what we're diving into today. Our mission, really, is to take you on the English accent tour. We're not here to teach you how to mimic a dozen different dialects, not at all. Instead, we want to give you the knowledge, the shortcut, to understand why these accents are different, so you can listen with total confidence and, well, comfort. We're trying to create your quick pathway to feeling well-informed about all this variation.
Exactly. Our core thesis is this. English is spoken in dozens of countries, and each place has developed its own rhythm, its own sound, its own linguistic identity.
And that diversity isn't a confusing problem. It's probably the most exciting thing about the language.
And understanding that diversity is, I think, fundamentally empowering for any learner. If you realize these differences aren't just random errors, but are actually historical and cultural markers, you stop fighting the sound
Yes.
and you start decoding the history. That is where true improvement in your listening skills begins almost naturally.
Okay, let's unpack this and jump right into the mechanism. If the sound is the symptom, what's the cause? Why did English, which started, in one small corner of Europe, fracture into so many distinct acoustic profiles?
What's so fascinating here is that accents don't just happen randomly. They're deeply rooted in the history of language contact, culture, and location. This is the mechanism of accent change. Some call it language evolution. So think about the global spread of English over centuries. As the language traveled, it met established local populations speaking their own native tongues, what linguists call substrate languages. And these populations already had their own ingrained habits, specific ways they move their mouths, their tongues, their lips, their own existing sound systems.
So when they started learning and speaking English, they weren't building a sound system from scratch. They were forcing a new set of English words through an existing, deeply established local sound filter.
Precisely. That's a perfect way to put it. They took the English structure and vocabulary, but they adapted the pronunciation to fit their established phonetic toolbox. Over time, that adaptation just solidified. If a local language didn't have a certain English vowel sound, they'd substitute the closest one they did have. If their language favored a strong stress on the first syllable, well, that pattern carried over into their English.
And eventually that combination, the English vocabulary mixed with local pronunciation habits, hardened into a distinct new accent.
Exactly. And crucially, once a group of English speakers is separated geographically, they stop participating in the sound changes happening back in the original location. Which is why, for example, American English sounds so different from British English today, even though they shared a common ancestor language 400 years ago. An accent is a fundamental part of identity. It's truly a linguistic fingerprint for a specific region.
A linguistic fingerprint. I love that. Okay, so now that we understand how they changed, let's take the tour. Let's look at specific examples from our sources, because this is where those historical differences really start to reveal themselves in sound. We'll start where English started, the British Isles. So many learners around the world, maybe because of history or media, they assume there's only one correct British accent. The formal, clear one taught in classes known as RP, or received pronunciation. But the truth is, the UK is a linguistic kaleidoscope. Accents can change dramatically, sometimes within just, 20 miles.
Oh, absolutely. This rapid change in the UK is the key contrast to, say, the US or Australia. The UK has thousands of years of dense settlement history, and that leads to intense linguistic divergence in these tiny spaces. And while RP is the standard for broadcasting and teaching, it's spoken by a tiny minority. The vast majority of accents vary wildly.
And here's where we need to get specific. Let's talk about the vowels. If you travel from northern England down towards the south, one of the most famous differences involves the A sound, specifically in words like bath, grass, and dance.
That's a classic one. In the north, they tend to use a short A sound, closer to the A in cat. But as you move south, that sound lengthens significantly. So you might hear a speaker from Manchester say BA with a short A, while a speaker from London or Oxford says bath with a long ass sound. It's a subtle difference, but it's a massive regional marker.
But wait, that's just the vowel shifts. The second major factor that can initially throw a learner off is what happens to the consonants, particularly the T sound in rapid informal speech.
This is where we introduce a key concept, the glottal stop. In many UK urban accents, the T sound, particularly when it's before another consonant or at the end of a word, is often replaced by a stop in the throat, a glottal stop. You hear this pause instead of the clear T.
So it almost sounds like the T is missing.
Exactly. Think about the word water. If you're expecting a crisp T, but you hear someone say war or boo instead of butter, your brain can short circuit. The T hasn't disappeared, it's just been transformed into a sound that feels silent to a non-native ear. And this process of dropping or softening sounds dramatically increases the perceived speed and complexity for the listener.
That complexity really shows how much regional history is packed into those sounds. It's a land defined by what it sometimes chooses to soften or drop. But let's use that as a contrast now. If the UK sound is, in part, defined by what it drops, let's cross the Atlantic and look at a place that defines itself by what it consistently retains, North America.
And that's where the clear North American R comes in. American English, while also having huge regional variation. I mean, you compare a Boston accent to a Texan drawl, they sound like they're from different planets. It does share one crucial unifying feature that can really help learners.
And what's that?
We need to use the right term here, rhoticity. A rhotic accent is one where the R sound is pronounced clearly after a vowel. American English, broadly speaking, is rhotic. The R in car, water, and bird is clearly articulated.
And why is that such a key insight for learners?
Because the original English spoken in the UK, from which the American settlers originated, was also rhotic. But over the last few centuries, Southern British English stopped pronouncing the R after vowels. It became non-rhotic. The American accent, due to that geographic separation we discussed, just kept the older pronunciation.
So the U.S. accent in this regard actually preserves an older form of the language. And for the learner, that consistent R pronunciation acts as a reliable anchor. If I hear ca versus car, the second one gives me a clear sound clue about the spelling.
Exactly. But let me challenge that for a second. For a learner who maybe started with RP or certain Commonwealth Englishes that are non-rhotic, wouldn't that strong, clear American R sound equally foreign and difficult?
That's a great point. It would sound foreign, but perhaps less ambiguous. The American R is strong. It's often retroflex, meaning the tongue curls back significantly. So while it might sound different, it's rarely dropped or replaced by something else. The consistency is the aid here, even if the sound itself takes practice.
Right. That consistent, clear R anchors the pronunciation contrast. Now, let's head down under. We're moving to Australia and New Zealand, where the accent profile shifts entirely. Our sources describe the Australian accent as friendly and casual, but phonetically, it involves some of the most dramatic vowel shifts in the world.
Friendly and casual perfectly sums up the cultural feeling, for sure. But structurally, that feeling translates into some very specific and unique rhythms.
Yeah, the first thing to notice is the vowels. Australian English is famous for what's called vowel centralization. Basically, the mouth doesn't open as wide as it might in American or standard British English. This pushes the vowels toward the center of the mouth, making them sound narrower and sometimes higher pitched. For example, the vowel in face or price becomes stretched and compressed, making the speaker sound like they're talking through a slightly smaller space.
And that compressed sound combines with that famous Australian trait, shortening words. This isn't just laziness. It's a deep cultural value placed on informality, and it has a technical name, clipping or epicope. So if you're having an afternoon barbecue, you're not having one in the afternoon, you're having one in the arvo. If you're playing football, you're playing footy. And your best friend isn't your best friend, they are your bestie. This linguistic efficiency is what makes the accent sound so fast, even when the speaker isn't talking quickly.
And if we briefly look at the neighbor, New Zealand, we see a related but distinct accent. New Zealand English tends to have even higher vowel sounds. The classic example is the I sound, where fish and chips often sounds closer to fush and chups to the untrained ear. It's a subtle but crucial differentiation from their Australian counterparts, proving that geographic proximity doesn't guarantee uniformity.
That speed and that unique rhythm require intense listening practice. But our tour cannot stop with the big three. If we're doing a deep dive, we need to broaden our view.
Absolutely. English thrives everywhere, and we have to acknowledge those other distinct and incredibly important stops on this global tour. Let's look at 3 more places where history created unique sound profiles.
Okay.
First, consider Canada. Many people mistake Canadian English for American, but one distinct feature is Canadian raising. This is a phonetic phenomenon where the vowel sound changes when it comes before voiceless consonants like T or K.
Can you give us an example of that?
Certainly. Think about the phrase out and about. Do. In certain American and British accents, the vowel in out might sound quite open. In Canada, the vowel sound shifts or raises, making the word out sound slightly closer to oot for some listeners. It's a small change, but it's pervasive, and it definitely contributes to the unique Canadian rhythm and tone.
That's the kind of specific detail that makes this dive so valuable. Okay, second, let's look at Ireland. What makes the Irish accent so distinct?
The Irish accent has this wonderful melodic quality and is often still rhotic, like American English, retaining that clear R sound. However, the vowel placement is quite different from North America. But what often stands out to learners is the unique stress patterns and the use of older English vocabulary, sometimes preserving words that fell out of use in England centuries ago. Plus, you'll frequently hear unique structural elements like using yous for the plural of you.
A great illustration of how culture and history are woven right into the grammar. Finally, let's travel down to South Africa. What specific trait should our listeners tune into there?
South Africa is linguistically fascinating because of the deep influence of Afrikaans and indigenous languages. The resulting accent has its own unique vowel system. For instance, the short I sound, as in kit or fish, tends to be pronounced slightly lower and more central, making it sound closer to a short E or sound to a foreign ear. It's a distinctly non-native English sound system applied to the English language, creating a highly recognizable and completely valid accent. And this raises the final unifying principle of this segment, whether we're talking about the glottal stops of the UK, the rhoticity of the US, the centralization in Australia, or the raising in Canada. None of them are wrong. They are simply different, unique, and valid ways of speaking the same language, born out of that collision of local linguistic habits with English history.
And acknowledging that validity takes us directly into the learner's toolkit, because we have to address the struggle head-on. If you are learning English, hearing this vast array of diverse accents, from the fast, connected British sounds to the clear American R's to the uniquely musical South African tone, can feel incredibly difficult and, sometimes overwhelming. If you frequently find yourself thinking, why does this sound so utterly different from the clear, slow, perfect recordings I learned from? We need to confirm that feeling is completely normal. It is not a sign of failure. It simply means your ear hasn't achieved full global adaptability yet.
And that adaptability is the key strategy. The solution is not frustration. It's consistent, regular listening exposure to diversity. Your brain is a fantastic pattern detector. The more diverse accents you hear, the more comfortable and versatile your ears become naturally. Your brain starts mapping the variations between the ah in London, the a in Manchester, and the a in New York.
So if that's the long-term strategy, what's the actionable advice for the learner in the moment? When that fast, unfamiliar accent hits your ears, what do you focus on instead of panicking and trying to catch every single word?
We need to shift the focus from individual words to the broader pattern. Here are 3 things to tune into when you encounter a challenging accent. First, focus on the main idea. Did you catch the topic? Do you know the speaker's core purpose? Accents affect the small, non-essential function words like prepositions, articles. They affect those more than the big content words. Don't let missing a the or an of stop you from grabbing the core meaning.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay, second, pay intense attention to common words and content words. These are your bedrock. Nouns, main verbs, key modifiers. Even with dramatically shifted vowels, the most important words, the ones carrying the bulk of the meaning, are usually pronounced similarly enough across accents that they can anchor your comprehension, even if the surrounding sounds are a bit fuzzy.
And finally, you talked earlier about the melody of language, which is often what defines an accent more than individual vowel sounds.
Precisely. The third focus is tuning into sentence stress and rhythm. This is huge. Accents are often defined by their melodic structure, their pitch, and where the speaker places emphasis. If you understand the rhythmic pattern, where the speaker is placing emphasis or which words are being rushed, you can often decode the intention and meaning, even if the individual words sound slightly blurry.
That rhythmic approach ensures your listening skills will improve holistically over time. It shifts the focus from achieving perfect individual pronunciation to achieving robust comprehension in any situation. And we come back to that core idea. An accent is simply a marker of identity, a unique linguistic fingerprint. Not a permanent barrier to understanding, it's just information about where the person comes from.
Yeah.
We took a fascinating global tour today, confirming that English sounds vastly different across the world. And this is not just normal. It is completely expected, given the way language evolves historically and culturally over distance and time. So we want to leave you with a final encouragement. Never be afraid of accents. Approach them with patience and intense curiosity. Every unique accent you hear, whether it's the quick-fire glottal stops of the UK style, the consistently erotic American tone, or the centralized vowels of the Australian rhythm, is a specific, personalized opportunity for you to improve your language skills. Keep listening, keep practicing, and most importantly, be kind to yourself as you continue this incredible linguistic journey.
And since we established that accents evolve because people mix local existing sounds with English, consider this. What sounds from your native language, the sounds you make every single day without thinking, might you be unconsciously integrating into your English speech? If you are a learner, you are creating your own unique and valid accent right now, blending your personal history with the global language. What is the resulting sound of your identity? What does your English sound like? That's something to think about the next time you speak.